Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at Earth and Sky. And those of you joining us online, we welcome you to the autumnal equinox. This is going to be a time where we turn the wheel of the year again as we move on into Mabon. This is the second of the harvest festivals. Last year we went in depth with a lot of the holidays on the wheel of the year. As you can see, Samhain is coming up pretty close. We just finished with Lunasa over here, Midsummer, and it's just exciting to turn the phase of the wheel. I hope that you've enjoyed our videos from last year where we went into talking a whole lot about how to live your life by the wheel of the year and how you can really manifest, create that life that you want, learn to live a life that's in balance. Well, we're kind of taking things a step further this year. We're really going into a lot of the moon phases this year, and we have two ideas. We're trying to decide between what our theme is going to be for next year. We thought we decided, but now we have a second option, so we're trying to figure that out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So this year, the equinox is September 22nd. It's always somewhere between September 21st and the 24th, depending. This is the astronomical aspect of figuring out when fall is. If you're on the East Coast, it's at 9:54 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want the exact time of the autumnal equinox this year, September 23rd, 9:54 p.m. Next year, it's going to be, or September 22nd, 9:54 p.m. Next year, it will be September 23rd, and then in 2020, it'll be September 22nd. And this is, of course, in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're watching us online and you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're getting ready to start spring, which is the opposite side of the wheel. You can always see which hemisphere, depending on which hemisphere you're in. The opposite is always just opposite the year on the wheel, or opposite time of the year on the wheel here. I really liked this quote by Sarah Morgan Bryan Pyatt. Her name is even longer than mine. That's almost tricky to do. It is the summer's great last heat. It is the fall's first chill, and they meet. And then we have the autumnal equinox. This is a time where the landscape around us explodes into vibrant colors. We're seeing those reds and oranges just starting to peek through. They'll be shining in full glory here over the next month. Those brilliant golden colors, all of the life that starts showing around us. And it's interesting because those vibrant colors come as the trees are starting to go to sleep. They're drawing in their nutrients and preparing to slumber for the year. Before long, they'll be losing their leaves and kind of hibernating in a way as they wait to come out in full bloom again when we come back up to spring. Everything has a cycle. Everything has a season. And it's about figuring out how to incorporate that into your own life. So even as a lot of the landscape is getting ready to sleep here soon, the grasses and everything else, as we prepare for the chill that comes in, a lot of the plants and trees might be slowing down and storing the nutrient as that sunlight decreases. But there are a lot of other things that are just starting to put on their show, like the asters, the dahlias, chrysanthemums, the sunflowers that are really in their height of glory right now. Pumpkins are brimming up from the earth and soon ripe for the picking as you get into the time for the jack-o'-lantern carving. The butterflies and the birds are starting their migration south for the winter. Maybe some of you are preparing to head south for the winter as well. But what are you doing to prepare for the winter? How are you starting to embrace this time of equality within nature? How do you embrace equality within your own life? How do you bring equality into the world as you prepare for this time of vibrant color and vibrant seasonal changes? This is the holiday that is designed really to start securing your blessings of the harvest so that you can share them with others. Mabon, the autumnal equinox. We have a story that we've discussed a few times now as we've gone through the quarters of the year. Now, just for a brief summary, the quarters of the year, you have Ostara, Mabon, Midsummer, and Yule. Those are your four main quarter holidays. The ones that are in between are the cross-quarter holidays. So you can know your main Sabbats and the Esbats, and they each have their own special meaning that you can look at in a huge variety of ways to incorporate into your life. Each of them have a wonderful, rich history too, as you explore that history around the world, whether it's looking at how the Native Americans really revered the earth and lived by the seasons, or you're looking at the Celts and how they had cherished all of these holidays, or maybe you're looking at some of the Wiccan traditions. There are a lot of ways that the holidays have been celebrated and changed throughout life too. Life tends to be flexible. We tend to change and grow through life and through generations as well. So at Yule, where we have our holly over here, this is where we started discussing the Holly King and the story of the holly and the oak king, and how that in years past, in time that has passed for many, many years, this time is where the two kings would battle against each other. The oak king would rise up against the holly king to bring back the light in eons past. And then you go directly across the year over here to midsummer, and you would see the opposite of that. So the holly king would rise up against the oak king to bring back the darkness. And it would seem, you would think of the oak king as really reigning when the light is in full bloom of summer. But as we get to these points, we start realizing that the darkness, just like now, we've just been finishing that height of summer, and the darkness is now starting to enclose upon us. And so this year, though, this winter at Yule, we told a little bit of a different story about the Oak King and the Holly King, because the Oak King came to wage battle, but he found the Holly King was really weak and frail. He was using a cane and had really lost a lot of his vigor. Normally at Yule, he would be a bit stronger and they would wage battle, but the Oak King would be more virile and have more vigor and would win the battle, because at Yule is where we would start seeing the light beginning to return to the earth. And so, but this year, we discussed, won't go too much into it, but you can watch the previous video where we discussed how the two kings had met. They talked together about how mankind has fallen out of balance with the wheel of the year. And we talked about how with the advent of light, mankind has really lost touch with nature and how to live in balance with the seasons of the year. We now have people that work through 3 different shifts, whether they get up at the morning or some people wake up at night because that's when they work through the night shift. People don't get out in nature as much, so they're not aware even of the season changes and how that impacts our life and how we can really grow, where we talk a lot about the time for planning, the time for planting, the time for the growing, and the time for harvesting. And so because mankind had fallen out of that balance, and with the advent of light, and people having lost their way with nature, the two kings instead decided that they were going to walk hand in hand with the hope that as they found balance with each other, that their example would bring peace to humans in the world, and that they would once again learn to walk with the seasons and find balance and harmony with themselves and their own lives. And so each of these quarter holidays, we've been addressing this again, and we've been looking in and peering in at these two kings and seeing how this new way of going, as they've drawn up this truce, and seeing how long they want to continue this truce and what they're learning along the way. So we revisited the story again briefly at the spring equinox, which is exactly opposite of the date that we have today. That's when the light shifted into equilibrium and was equal parts light and dark. And then again at the summer solstice, we talked about this. And when in eons past, the kings would battle again against each other, because you see, for millennia, these two kings would battle twice a year, in winter at Yule and in summer. And at the summer solstice, the Holly King would usually reign victorious and would slowly bring back the darkness, and the Oak King in years past would retreat to heal his wounds at midsummer. But this year, they've really learned a lot as they've walked hand in hand with each other, as they drew up that truce and they decided to continue walking hand in hand, and they began to realize that even though they would rule opposing sides of the earth, opposing sides of the world, they now realize that they have a lot more similarities than they have differences. These two kings have realized that there is beauty and strength in relying on and assisting each other. They have wisdom now that they would like to pass on to us, that they've learned as they've started to, instead of just ruling their own side of the world and flipping and battling to retain and attain that ability to rule the other side of the world, they'd like to share these wisdoms with us as we reach this next equinox. So it is now about even more than just following, it's now even more than just following the path of the year. It's really about finding equality and creating equality at this time of the equinox. It is time where people will need to start treating people equally, to treat yourself with kindness, to stand up against bullying when you see it, to stand up against racism, to stand up against hate of any nature. Because these two kings have found, as they've stood up for each other instead of battling each other, that when you don't stand up, when you see someone being mistreated, that you become compliant in the divisive nature that has been flowing in this world for quite some time. The division that continues to happen so often, whether it's between people or seasons, simply weakens us all. The two kings have spent nearly a year now walking hand in hand. When the Holly King was weak, the Oak King reached out his hand and helped the Holly King to stand strong. And then at the spring equinox, the Holly King had healed, and they were both matched in their virility and power as they stood together as one. Then when we arrived at the summer solstice this year, and as it drew near, the Holly King didn't wage war again, as was in his previous nature, to overtake the Oak King, even as he saw the Oak King had started to lose a bit of his strength. The Oak King had started to grow a bit weary after the light had increased and the summer rolled in with the longer days and those hotter temperatures. Yet they stood hand in hand, the Holly King supporting his friend, now the Oak King. And now we stand again at the in-between, this time of Mabon, this time of the equinox, this time of equality. And both of these kings are strong and virile as the light and the dark are in balance. We know that winter is dawning, and we just enjoyed the time of summer. Hopefully you've learned to play a little bit more outside as we've been talking about the Wheel of the Year and talking about nature, and as the weather beckoned you to enjoy it a little bit more. And also to recognize the path as a wheel, the path of the wheel as a way to bring balance into your life. That's where we started with all of this, with the kings realizing that we need more balance in this world. For now is the point of the harvest, the midpoint, the second of the harvest festivals, because we have Lunasa, Mabon, and Samhain for our harvest festivals. And the kings have found strength in each other, and we can start to follow their lead as they've brought this example to us. When one was strong and the other felt weak, they joined hands, and the strong one lifted the other. As partners in health, virility, and life, they stood together in spring. The balance shifted, and the king who was once strong found himself to be weak, but the beauty and the blessing was that his friend was now healthy, assured, and stood strongly, still holding his hand. For you see, when we as a nation and as people who encircle the globe, as we hold each other up, when we stand as one, as hundreds, and even as thousands, and maybe even more, we stand in a circle and we raise each other up. We hold each other's hands, whether sick, healthy, rich, poor, weak, strong, all races, all genders, and of all walks of life. we hold each other's hand. When we look into the eyes of one another and we recognize the soul, we see within that truly we are one. And we stand in this circle united, and nothing will let us fall. Let us not make mistakes for eons and eons that these two kings had made as they would battle and wage war, and divided they would fall, taking 6 months to heal their wounds, only to rise again and repeat those same patterns, pulling each other down instead of lifting each other up. Let us learn from these two kings and the lessons that they have learned through this year, that we have far more in common than we have different. And truly our differences is what makes us unique and beautiful, allowing us to create great things together. So stand up against bullying, stand up against hate, stand up against racism, stand up to help someone when you see they need it, whatever type of help it is. Begin to do those random acts of kindness and without looking for recognition or thanks. As I said, this is the second time of the harvest, and historically this is that time to take stock of what you might have in abundance and offer some of it to your neighbors, to your friends, and also to strangers. Enjoy this bit of beauty that we have as we stand in the equinox. Take time to go outside, enjoy, take in the warm, deep red sunsets, and take in the beautiful setting sun with its orange, red, beautiful hues streaking across the clouds. Watch the moon as it hangs low in the sky, echoing the reflection of the red rays of our brightest star. Reflect on what you can do to make the world brighter, to bring equality during this time of the equinox and beyond. I hope this helps you to think of some things that you can do as we stand in this in-between time, this beautiful season of Mabon, where it's not too hot and it's not too cold, and we have such bounty that's growing all around us. And I hope you enjoyed this Life Talk. Please hit the like button, share this out to your friends and family, and we will see you next week as we talk about the next moon phase as we come into the beautiful September moon. Have a great week, everyone.